The neon glow of Las Vegas still shines as bright as ever, but behind the lights, a shocking truth is emerging: tourists are no longer impressed. For decades, this desert city thrived on a steady flow of dreamers chasing fortune and excitement. Yet, in 2025, the numbers tell a story. Casino bosses don't want you to hear. Visitors are leaving frustrated, disappointed, and in many cases, vowing never to return. From skyrocketing resort fees and parking charges that blindside travelers, to the disappearance of iconic buffets and the rise of cold robotic service, Vegas has begun to feel less like an escape and more like a trap. Social media is filled with angry posts from tourists saying the city has lost its soul, with some even claiming it's now cheaper to fly to Hawaii or Europe than to spend a weekend on the Strip. And the backlash isn't coming from outsiders alone. Even loyal visitors who once came year after year are saying enough is enough. The real question is no longer whether Las Vegas can survive, but whether it can win back the very people it depends on. Tonight, we pull back the curtain on why Vegas tourism has finally hit its breaking point and what visitors are really saying about America's most famous playground. By the middle of the 2020s, the cracks in Las Vegas's tourism empire had become impossible to ignore. The official visitor numbers, once a source of pride for city leaders, began telling a darker story. In 2019, before the pandemic, Vegas welcomed more than 42 million visitors, a figure that seemed untouchable. But as recovery limped along in the years that followed, the growth never fully returned. By 2023, the number had slipped below 39 million, and in the first half of 2025, reports showed a decline that shocked even the most optimistic casino executives. Vegas was on pace to lose several million more tourists compared to just 2 years earlier. At first, the narrative was spun as temporary airline disruptions, inflation, or international travel shifts. But as the months rolled on, the reality became clear. Tourists weren't just delayed, they were deliberately staying away. Convention bookings, once the backbone of weekday tourism, were slipping as companies found it cheaper to host hybrid online events. The weekend getaway crowd from California, traditionally one of Vegas's most reliable pipelines, started shrinking too, with many citing costs that had spiraled out of control. What really stung were the comparisons. Travel forums lit up with posts from frustrated Americans who argued that a weekend in Vegas now cost more than a trip to Mexico or the Caribbean. Canadian travelers, who once made up nearly 20% of international visitors, were pulling back, complaining about flights being too expensive and hotel fees too predatory. For the first time in decades, surveys showed a significant share of loyal Vegas visitors saying they plan to skip the city altogether in the coming year. Behind the numbers were the stories. Families who had budgeted for a fun weekend found themselves hit with $45 a night resort fees, $30 cocktails, and $40 parking charges. A retired couple who had been visiting Vegas every spring for 20 years told reporters they wouldn't be coming back, describing the Strip as a machine designed to squeeze every dollar out of you. Young travelers, the demographic Vegas most wanted to capture, were less interested in slot machines and more excited about digital experiences elsewhere. They saw the Strip as outdated, overpriced, and hollow compared to destinations that actually offered value. Even the airlines painted a grim picture. Flight capacity into Las Vegas fell by nearly 10% compared to 2022 as carriers quietly trimmed routes that no longer filled up. Tourism boards in rival cities like Miami and Orlando started reporting upticks, with some openly celebrating Vegas's stumble. The message was clear: the competition for tourist dollars had intensified, and Las Vegas was losing ground. For the Strip's corporations, the short-term profits still looked good. Casinos reported revenue growth thanks to higher prices and more aggressive fees. But behind the glossy earnings reports, the foundation was eroding. Tourists might pay once, but many swore they wouldn't pay again. The trend lines showed that the one-and-done mentality was replacing the repeat visitor loyalty that had fueled Vegas for decades. And if the numbers kept sliding, no amount of neon could hide the fact that the city was bleeding its lifeblood: trust. The breaking point was no longer hypothetical. It was here, etched in statistics shouted across social media and quietly admitted by executives in closed-door meetings. The question looming over the Strip was chilling. How long can Las Vegas survive if its own visitors are the ones pulling the plug? If the numbers revealed the cracks in Vegas's foundation, the experiences of visitors showed just how deep those cracks ran. For decades, tourists came to the Strip not only for the games, but for the atmosphere buffets that stretched for miles over the top stage shows, and the warmth of hospitality that made even losing money feel like part of the adventure. By the late 2020s, that magic had started to vanish, and visitors noticed. One of the biggest complaints echoed across online reviews and travel blogs was the disappearance of the legendary Vegas buffet. Once a symbol of excess, the all-you-can-eat tradition had been cut back drastically or eliminated in many resorts. What used to cost $20 and deliver a feast now carried price tags north of $70, often with limited selections. Tourists who remembered the days of crab legs and endless desserts felt cheated when confronted with downsized, overpriced versions that no longer carried the same excitement. For many, this wasn't just about food, it was about losing a tradition that defined Vegas. Then came the service, or as many described it, the lack of service. Tourists arriving on the Strip increasingly found themselves greeted not by smiling clerks or friendly dealers, but by cold kiosks and automated machines. AI-powered check-in desks replaced human interaction, while robotic bartenders mixed drinks with clinical precision. The novelty quickly wore off, leaving many travelers feeling like they were in a futuristic experiment rather than on vacation. It feels like the city doesn't want humans anymore, one visitor wrote on social media. I came for fun, not to be scanned and served by a robot. The issue wasn't just technology. Visitors also complained about the energy, or rather the lack of it. Walking the Strip in the late 2020s, travelers described crowds that looked large but felt strangely hollow. Casinos were packed, but the buzz of excitement was missing. Dealers no longer cracked jokes. Bartenders no longer remembered your drink and free perks that once defined the Vegas experience had nearly disappeared. Even the shows, once the pride of the Strip, shifted toward AI-generated holograms or corporate tie-ins that lacked the soul of live entertainment. A review that went viral described it perfectly. Vegas looks alive, but it feels dead inside. Cost layered on top of disappointment. A simple cocktail could run $30. A single ride down the Strip in a taxi or rideshare could cost more than dinner. Resort fees once hidden, annoyances ballooned into genuine deal breakers. Many tourists admitted they had budgeted carefully for their trips, only to discover the final bill doubled by hidden charges. In one viral TikTok, a group of friends detailed how their $800 weekend getaway turned into a $1,600 financial nightmare after fees, parking, and food costs piled up. The video racked up millions of views, and the comments section was filled with people saying, "This is why I'm not going back." International visitors felt the sting too. Travelers from Europe, accustomed to paying high prices at home, still described Vegas as shockingly expensive without the payoff. Canadians who once made Las Vegas a favorite short-haul destination said bluntly that it now costs less to vacation in Mexico or even fly across the Atlantic. The perception had shifted from Vegas is a bargain playground to Vegas is a money trap. And once that perception takes root, it's hard to reverse. What made these complaints particularly dangerous for the city was their reach. In the age of social media, bad experiences don't just end with the traveler, they ripple outward to millions. A single TikTok or YouTube video showing long lines robotic service or outrageously priced drinks could go viral overnight, discouraging thousands of potential visitors. Word of mouth, once Vegas's greatest ally, had turned against it. Perhaps most damning was the growing sentiment that Vegas had lost its soul. Tourists no longer described the Strip as magical, chaotic, or thrilling. Instead, they called it sterile, greedy, and empty. A place that once symbolized freedom and excess now felt like a corporate machine designed to squeeze money out of every moment. Visitors weren't just complaining, they were mourning what the city used to be. By the time they returned home, many said the same thing: once was enough. And that shift from repeat visitors to one-time tourists signaled a breaking point far more dangerous than any single bad review. Vegas could survive bad years, but could it survive losing its identity in the eyes of the people who mattered most? If there was any doubt about how bad things had gotten, the viral stories from visitors made it undeniable. Individual incidents began piling up, each one fueling the perception that Las Vegas was no longer a city of dreams, but a city of scams. One of the most infamous examples came from a family road tripping from California. They checked into a mid-tier strip resort expecting a reasonable weekend, only to be blindsided with a $45 a night resort fee and a $40 daily parking charge costs, never made clear during booking. Their frustration boiled over when they realized the so-called resort amenities included nothing more than Wi-Fi and a gym they never used. The father filmed his rant in the parking garage, uploaded it to TikTok, and within days the clip had millions of views. The comments were brutal. "Vegas is dead to me. This is why I go to Mexico. I'd rather spend the money on Hawaii." It wasn't just one family. Social media began to overflow with stories from tourists who felt cheated. A Canadian couple posted receipts showing they spent more on a single weekend in Las Vegas than on a full week in Cancun, including airfare. Their conclusion went viral. Why gamble in Vegas when the real gamble is the bill at the end? Stories like these spread quickly, with news outlets picking them up and amplifying the anger. Then came the concert fiascos. In 2024 and 2025, several high-profile shows were abruptly canceled, sometimes minutes before curtain. Fans who had flown in specifically for these events were left stranded hundreds or thousands of dollars poorer. One British traveler shared his story of flying across the Atlantic for a headline residency show that was canceled at the last second. He described Vegas as the most expensive disappointment of my life. His post racked up international headlines, fueling the idea that Vegas no longer delivered on its promises. The anger extended beyond entertainment. Food became another battleground. Viral reviews showed $30 cocktails poured into plastic cups, $100 steaks served without sides, and pizzas priced at levels that shocked even wealthy travelers. One influencer filmed a Vegas food hall that added up to nearly $400 for what looked like basic fast food with a luxury price tag. Her video's caption said it all. "This isn't fun anymore. This is robbery with neon lights." Comparisons became the most damaging trend. Tourists weren't just angry, they were pointing to alternatives. Travelers said they could vacation in Hawaii for the same price, enjoying beaches and natural beauty instead of smoky casinos. Others compared Vegas unfavorably to Macau, which still offered free perks and a sense of luxury without nickel and diming visitors. Some even pointed to Dubai, where over-the-top experiences came with world-class service, making Las Vegas look dated and overpriced in comparison. In every case, the message was clear. Vegas was no longer the best deal or the most exciting option. It was just the loudest. The breaking point was highlighted by a viral hashtag, #Never Vegas Again. Thousands of users shared stories of hidden fees, canceled shows, robotic service, and a sense of betrayal. One post summed it up: "Vegas used to make me feel alive. Now it makes me feel like a wallet on legs." The hashtag trended for days, capturing mainstream media attention and putting the city's image crisis on full display. These individual stories, amplified by millions of shares, did more damage than any single statistic could. It wasn't just about numbers, it was about emotion. The perception spread that Vegas was no longer a magical escape, but a cautionary tale. The Strip still shined, but in the eyes of frustrated visitors, those lights now looked like warning signs. And perhaps the most dangerous part, every one of those angry tourists represented more than just a lost ticket or a missed drink. They represented future visitors, friends, family, and followers who would hear the stories and decide not to come at all. Once the narrative shifted from "Vegas is amazing" to "Vegas is a ripoff," the city wasn't just losing customers, it was losing its reputation. And in tourism, reputation is everything. While tourists raged online and international headlines piled up, the real damage was happening inside Las Vegas itself. For all the record profits the casinos bragged about in quarterly reports, the ripple effects across the city painted a far darker picture. At street level, small businesses, the lifeblood of local Vegas outside the Strip, were collapsing under the weight of declining foot traffic. In neighborhoods just a few blocks away from the glowing towers, family-run restaurants, souvenir shops, and corner bars that once thrived on steady streams of visitors saw their revenue evaporate. With fewer repeat tourists coming back, locals weren't enough to keep these businesses afloat. Many storefronts sat empty, their neon signs flickering out for the last time. For longtime residents, it was heartbreaking the city famous for endless energy now had stretches that looked eerily abandoned. The workers felt the pain even more directly. By 2029, estimates suggested that more than 40,000 hospitality jobs had disappeared, not because casinos weren't making money, but because corporations found ways to replace people with automation. Check-in clerks, bartenders, even live performers' roles, once considered essential, were being phased out. For those who managed to keep their jobs, wages stagnated while the cost of living soared. Rent across the Las Vegas Valley nearly doubled over 5 years, driven by investors buying up property while locals were forced further into the desert. Ironically, while the Strip still glittered, the neighborhoods around it slipped into decline. Reports documented rising homelessness and tent encampments spreading into empty lots. Former casino workers, unable to afford housing after losing their jobs, joined the growing population of people living on the margins. Yet tourists rarely saw this side of Vegas shielded by the carefully maintained facade of the Strip, where security patrols and surveillance kept the illusion intact. The disconnect grew wider. Casinos were boasting record revenues, much of it from international players logging into the metaverse casinos, while the people who lived and worked in Las Vegas reaped none of those profits. The city had effectively split in two, one digital global and profitable, the other physical local and struggling to survive. Vegas had become a case study in what happens when Wall Street's grip on tourism leaves ordinary workers behind. Cultural consequences were just as devastating. Once iconic Vegas traditions, the buffets, the lounge shows, the quirky street performances were vanishing, replaced by AI-run experiences that felt soulless. Tourists noticed, but locals felt it even more deeply. This wasn't just about jobs, it was about identity. People who had spent decades in the entertainment industry suddenly found themselves obsolete, watching as holograms replaced live singers and robots replaced magicians. For them, Las Vegas no longer felt like their city. Even city leaders struggled to manage the fallout. Tax revenues from casinos were strong, but they weren't trickling down. Public schools in working-class neighborhoods faced budget shortfalls, while healthcare systems were overwhelmed by the growing poverty crisis. Police reports showed an uptick in crime outside tourist zones as displaced residents turned to desperate measures. Meanwhile, inside the Strip's luxury hotels, drones and AI-driven surveillance made sure visitors never saw the struggles happening just beyond the neon glow. For ordinary Nevadans, it felt like betrayal. They had built their lives around the promise of Vegas that the city would always offer opportunity if you worked hard enough. But by 2030, that promise was gone. What replaced it was a city that catered to international high rollers and digital avatars while treating its own citizens as expendable. The phrase "Old Vegas" took on a new meaning, not just as nostalgia for Rat Pack glamour, but as a memory of a time when the city belonged to people, not machines and corporate boards. The irony couldn't be missed. Las Vegas, once the ultimate playground for ordinary Americans seeking a taste of luxury, had transformed into a place where even tourists felt unwelcome. And as they stopped coming, the people who lived in Vegas suffered the most. The Strip kept shining, but the rest of the city was dimming, one shuttered business and one lost job at a time. As Las Vegas stood at this breaking point, a fierce debate erupted over whether the city could still save itself or whether it had already crossed the line of no return. On paper, the solution seemed straightforward. Tourism experts warned that if Vegas wanted to win back its core visitors, it had to return to the basics, lower or eliminate resort fees, bring back affordable buffets, improve genuine human service, and stop relying on tricks that made tourists feel like they were being fleeced. In interviews, longtime convention organizers urged casinos to stop pricing out the very travelers who built the city. Economists argued that sustainable growth required loyalty, not one-time profit extraction. There were also cultural calls for a reset. Performers and community leaders pushed for a revival of live shows, insisting that the human touch was what made Vegas different from Dubai or Macau. They demanded a return to experiences that couldn't be replicated by holograms or VR moments of spontaneity, laughter, and surprise. Vegas was built on spectacle, one showrunner told the press, but it was the human spectacle that made it unforgettable. Yet, for all the talk of reform, the corporations that ran the Strip showed little interest in change. To them, the numbers still looked too good. Even with fewer physical visitors, profits soared thanks to higher fees, inflated prices, and the booming casino metaverse. Shareholders praised the short-term strategy, and Wall Street rewarded the model. The executives didn't see a problem to solve, they saw a winning formula. Why bring back cheap buffets when AI-run virtual casinos were raking in billions from international players who never set foot in Nevada? This corporate blindness only deepened the resentment among tourists. Social media was filled with warnings from frustrated visitors declaring they would never return unless things changed. A comment that went viral read, "I loved Vegas for 20 years, but it's unrecognizable now. If they don't start caring about people instead of profits, I'm done forever." Others echoed the sentiment, saying they felt scammed, unwelcome, or simply exhausted by the constant nickel and diming. The most damaging part wasn't just the anger, it was the resignation. Once loyal repeat visitors were openly declaring that Vegas had lost them for good, for the city that spelled danger far greater than any temporary slump. Las Vegas was built on repeat customers, on people who came back year after year, sometimes multiple times a year. If those people stopped returning, no amount of flashy marketing could fill the void. Younger generations, meanwhile, showed little sign of replacing them. Surveys revealed that many in their 20s and 30s didn't see Vegas as a must-visit destination at all. For them, travel meant experiences of broad natural beauty or digital adventures that didn't involve spending a fortune on the Strip. This generational shift raised the darkest possibility of all that Vegas might not just be at a breaking point, it might be at the end of its era as America's ultimate playground. Cities like Dubai, Singapore, and Macau had already captured the global elite, while Vegas risked becoming a hollow relic clinging to its neon past, while failing to deliver a future people actually wanted. Could Las Vegas change course? Technically, yes. It could slash fees, invest in workers, revive its traditions, and rediscover the balance between profit and experience. But that would require something the Strip's corporations no longer seemed willing to offer sacrifice. It would mean choosing long-term loyalty over short-term gain and putting people, tourists and workers alike, back at the center of the city's identity. The fear is that by the time they realize this, it may already be too late. Tourists are speaking loudly in reviews, in viral videos, in hashtags that warn others to stay away. And the one thing more dangerous than angry visitors is silence when people stop complaining, because they've already decided they'll never come back. As Vegas stares into 2030, the future is no longer guaranteed. The Strip may keep glowing, but without visitors who truly believe in its magic, the city risks becoming the one thing it never wanted to be: forgettable. Las Vegas still shines, but the shine no longer hides the truth. For decades, this city promised escape, thrill, and memories that lasted a lifetime. Now, too many visitors walk away feeling cheated, disappointed, or worse, indifferent. The numbers show the cracks. The viral stories prove the anger, and the voices of travelers themselves are saying the same thing: Vegas has changed, and not for the better. The irony is painful. At the exact moment when the Strip is pulling in record profits through fees, overpriced drinks, and even virtual casinos, it's losing the one resource it can't afford to lose: trust. Without trust, without loyalty, without the repeat visitors who once returned year after year, the Vegas dream risks collapsing under its own greed. Tourists aren't just customers, they are the lifeblood of the city. And when they start saying never again, the city should be terrified. The breaking point has already arrived. Whether Las Vegas can pull itself back from the edge depends on choices its corporations and leaders make now. Will they listen to the people who built this city's reputation, or will they continue chasing short-term profits until the last visitor is gone? Now it's your turn. Do you think Las Vegas can still save itself, or has the city crossed a line it can never come back from? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your story. And if you want to keep uncovering the hidden truths behind America's brightest lights and darkest shadows, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because what's happening in Vegas today may be the warning for every city tomorrow.